order at 7:08 p.m. And the first agenda item is the budget presentation.
We can do the pledge if you want to begin with.
That's why I was stumbling for words, as we
Oh.
usually do the Pledge of Allegiance. I think we should
Let's
probably
do
do the
that.
Pledge of Allegiance, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So tonight we are going to discuss the MVSD fiscal year 25 budget proposal number 3. And our agenda tonight consists of what is new in this budget, impact on taxes, importance of school borrowing, MVSD school performance. The MVSD budget proposal 3 is $1,035,000
The first
less
cut,
from the first cut.
right, the first
First
budget
cut.
proposal was the $50,779,437 that went out on town meeting day.
Yep.
The second vote, we cut $1,035,000. And this third vote, we've cut a further $835,000 for a total of $1,700,000. And that budget total is $48,909,437. That's the amount that folks will be voting for.
Voting on the next week.
On the 18th.
Yep. And now we have new reductions. And Pierre, would you like to?
You read it?
Yes, please.
Okay. So we cut $250,000 for the capital projects, and that is the Highgate roof and then adjustments to actuals. We cut $10,765,000 from the principal's office, and that was a savings we had at the Swanton School. We've cut a special ed clerical position from one FTE in Swanton, and the amount of that is $49,724,000, and $42,000 of that is salary, and the remainder is of benefits of $7,093. We've also cut for the district office $30,733, and that is the HR finance staff of 0.75 FTE. The salary decreased by $27,330, and the benefits were $3,403. That's what's broken down, so that to come with a total of $30,733. And again, in the district office, we're talking about the central office when we talk about the district office, and the first one we're talking about administrative positions. We've cut another $75,000 in interest expense. And again, from the district office, we also cut another $148,569, and that's an HRA benefit expense. And I don't have the total there, but does that come to about
$240 something
about
thousand
$240,000 that was cut from the district office. And student management, we cut $102,066, and that is from an FTE MVU management position. And again, that's broken down with salary of $74,866 and the benefits of $27,201. We also cut another $61,488 from plant operations, and that is an MVSD custodian. I just wanted to explain a little further on that. That was a position that we had added. It was supposed to be a floating position, but we decided that because of the we needed to cut the budget, that we decided not to add this position. And then the salary for that position was $53,144, and the benefits is $8,344. I didn't want anyone to think that we cut a custodian that's existing, that was just an added position. And then we also cut another $111,000 in 9 from the general instruction, and that is a teaching position. We currently have a teaching position that has not been filled, and we've decided to cut it from the budget. And that's $72,250 in salary estimate, and the benefits are $38,759. And that totals your $835,000.
Thank you. Peter, can you do the next slide for the Highgate Elementary roof, please?
So the Highgate Elementary roof is something that we've had in the budget, the last 2 budget proposals, and it's something that we wanted to keep in the budget, but because of contracting, we were very lucky actually. After the first budget passed, we were able to put it in with the second budget as well, because the same company that was doing the roof here at MVU, we were also going to have to do the one in Highgate, and because of that relationship, they were willing to still do the job as long as we had a approved budget by May 1st. When our second budget was also defeated, that lost our ability to be able to contract for the 2025 fiscal year to get the roof done in Highgate. So unfortunately, it still needs to be accomplished, but it's not going to be able to be done in this next fiscal year. It's unfortunate that we're not going to be able to do that, because it does need to be done, but we just don't have the capability of getting it done. So hopefully we'll be able to have room in the budget next year for this project.
Elaine, can you do the reallocated funds, please?
Yep, so with all those cuts, we did reallocate some funds to other areas. So as Peter mentioned, while we did have to take the Highgate roof off due to not being able to get to a contract, we did have to set some money aside in plant operations, because we know that repairs will be needed until we can replace the roof. So there is an increase of $128,000 for plant operations. We've also since received more information regarding special ed students. Special ed is kind of a moving target throughout the year. So since we did the last budget, we have more students who have more needs. So there's an increase there, $250,500. That's really due to their needs and their transportation. Likewise, we're now in the contract season, so we have some additional information on increases to instructional salaries and benefits. Essentially, this is teachers who have moved up in their steps, so they have an increase in pay, may have changed their health plans from single to family, those sorts of things. So we were just realigning the budget to the most recent actuals that we know.
Mm-hmm. And I know there's been some confusion around that, so I wanted to make it clear that, with the cutting of the roof project, about $250,000 of that was a pure cut to this budget and this proposal, and the other was reallocated to other areas where we were afraid of perhaps running a deficit in those line items.
Would you continue on with the proposed tax rate, please?
I'll be happy to just say,
All in everybody too.
we just wanted to point out with this graph that the tax rate since we've merged, there's the equalized tax rate, and then there's your total tax rate that includes the common level appraisal that you see on their tax bill. The equalized tax rate is the part that is related to our specific budget, and when we merged, we were at $1.42, almost $1.43. And when I reviewed the tax information for FY20, our town common level appraisal, those were at like about 100%. So we did not have a negative impact to our tax rate, and folks' total tax bill was around the $1.42, $1.43. Franklin, I think, was $1.48, and Swanton and Highgate was a little lower. Since that time, the district equalized tax rate has gone down nearly every year, and this budget proposal has the equalized tax rate, the part that's controlled by our budget, at $1.19. However, taxpayers have seen an increase in their property values, and the common level of appraisal has had a larger impact over those same 5 years. So now that is a bigger portion of your tax increase than in previous years.
Megan, you want to do this slide?
Yes, so this current proposal, proposal number 3, versus the initial proposal, you'll see in the bluish gray color, that's where we started with our tax rate savings. The highest of Franklin was 1.796.
On town meeting.
Correct, with our first proposal as of town meeting. That's where we were. As of this iteration, we are down to a 15-cent reduction in Franklin, 14-cent reduction for Highgate, and a 14-cent reduction for Swanton as well.
Excuse me. Thank you, Megan. Did you want to do the next one?
Not quite sure what it is.
Okay. Then I'll give you another one. Julie, do the tax increase.
Can you give me that
With the notes.
because this is running slow. This first bubble here, the $123 is an average tax rate of the 3 towns from last year, and is comparing that to this year. Second bubble here of 76 shows the amount saved in this proposal compared to proposal 2. Greater than 75% of Vermont school districts spend more per student than MVSD, and more than 80% of Vermont school districts have approved their budgets, and the state has set tax rates to ensure these budgets are funded. So this is an averaging of the increase due to the tax rate.
So this slide reflects the impact of the common level of appraisal, the CLA. So just because of the value of our homes, so the increased home value. So for Franklin, this will impact $100,000 listed home value by $445. For Highgate, this will impact $100,000 listed home value by $321, and for Swanton, the CLA will impact it by $318.
I have a note here that if the CLA was at 100% in each town, these numbers would be 0. And the equalized tax rate would be the final tax rate of $1.19.
School borrowing, the new school year funded is distributed by the state in December, but prior school year budgets run out in June. That's why every single school district in Vermont has to borrow money every year to bridge the gap. There is no additional cost to the community. It does not authorize districts to borrow more than the approved budget, and it does not affect taxes. State law prohibits borrowing without taxpayer approval, except if there is no budget in place by July 1st. If the borrowing article is not approved, the district will still be able to borrow 87% of the previous budget, as explained on the following slide. And that is until we get a budget passed.
Right. If there's no budget on July 1st, we continue to go out to the taxpayer, to the voters, until there is a budget that is passed. There is a specific statute that allows school districts to borrow that up to 87% of last year's budget to continue the essential operations, but there are many drawbacks to that. It is a specific law that only in the case of no budget by July 1st, then districts can borrow. The rest of the time, we do need taxpayer approval to borrow. The drawbacks really are that if we don't have a budget and we're only borrowing, we can't do anything that's non-essential. So that means pausing things like athletics and field trips and transportation for after school, things that are really important to our students but are not the essential of making sure we have teachers and support staff to run school. So those things, as soon as we have a budget, we would be able to go ahead with.
So we also wanted to touch upon just school performance in general. MVSD is clearly one of the best values in Vermont when we're looking at performance and dollars spent. This budget is nearly $1,500 per student below the state average. So we're spending nearly $1,500 less per student than the average school in the state. Despite that, MVSD is ranked in the top half of all high schools in the state. Our test scores have also exceeded the state average in math and language arts. And we've also seen a drastic increase in our attendance, and overall school climate is improving as well. So again, just reiterating that for the amount of money members of our district pay, we're really getting a great value and providing students a lot of opportunities for growth.
We want to encourage people to get out on Tuesday, June 18th, to the usual places to vote, the Village Complex in Swanton, the Arena in Highgate, and the Franklin Town Hall from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Thank you. Andrew, the next agenda item is if there's any questions from anybody that is online.
Quick question, if you can hear me.
We can.
Yes.
You had a slide that showed that 80% of the schools had passed a budget earlier. Was that the first time they voted or on the second vote, or is that a recent percentage?
You know, it might even be a little bit higher. Right now, I think we're one of 9 districts in the state that does not have a passed budget. Some of them were on the first, there were, I think, 27 that didn't pass the first time around. More recently, some of the communities that voted for the third time just passed their budgets. But we're one of the last, as of Friday, we were one of the last 9.
I think something.
So, go ahead.
I was just going to say, to align with that, the 9 that have not passed are some of the schools that are the lowest spenders in the state. I don't have the specific schools or amount, but I do remember reading that in 2 newspapers.
Absolutely. We were having that conversation with Interim Secretary Saunders on Friday and made the point that 4 of the trustees sitting around the table, so those were superintendents representing districts that didn't have budgets, were also the lowest spending, or in our case, we're in the bottom quarter. We're some of the lowest spending districts in the state, and the higher spending districts have passed their budgets. And, you know, we tend to be cutting the neediest of schools.
Which was opposite the goal that was set when the legislature worked for 5 or 6 years with researchers from the University of Vermont to try to get more equity and fairness, and this is what happened.
And I think it's also important to note that 80% of districts that have passed, that means that the legislature has more, they have 80% of budget, so they're able to sort of see what's coming in. And so the impact that changes to our budget will have on tax rates is incredibly minimal at this point in time because the vast majority of districts have already passed their budgets.
Sorry about that, Yvonne.
No, that's all good. Seems one of the concerns I guess that I have is there are two questions that is being asked to pass this budget and two very different votes. I don't know if anyone has taken the time to look at each of them individually, what the difference was between the first vote and the second vote. And if I recall correctly, between the first and the second, we were at somewhere around 30 to 33% off from passing the budget. What I didn't notice is whether or not we had gained any votes on passing, giving the school board the authority to borrow money. That is the one that I'm concerned about.
Yes, Yvonne,
I mean,
we nearly passed that. That failed by one vote.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Brandy Maskell has a question.
That is, Brandy's wanting to know where the money is borrowed from, and that would be from a financial institution. And yes, there is interest attached to that. When we are borrowing in anticipation of taxes, it's a smaller amount and we reinvest that and we usually earn interest on that. But when you're talking about borrowing that much funds, likely the district would end up having to pay interest, yes.
Do we have any other questions or comments or anything that we might have missed? Anybody would like to know about?
Another question. I'm going to try to be an optimist, not a pessimist, but if it doesn't pass, when would our next vote be? Because if I'm not mistaken, we still have to continue to pass a budget regardless.
That is correct.
It depends on if the borrowing article passes.
We should be okay because we'll have the authority to borrow already from the statute of up to 87%. So because we'll be in FY25 after July 1, we should be able to go out every 10 days or so with a budget.
And isn't there a scenario where if we pass a budget but the borrowing article fails?
Oh, then we're in trouble.
Yeah.
Because we wouldn't be able to operate until September. We might, things would be quite tight. So it would have a negative impact on all the non-essential things as well, because we'd have to, we'd be worried about that. We get our first education fund payment in September.
Another question from Stacy C. Approximately how much interest do we lose by not being able to reinvest a portion?
I believe Laura said before we earn about $300,000 a year by reinvesting.
But she wants to know how much we lose by
Well,
not.
we lose it
about $300,000.
$300,000 because if we don't pass the borrowing article, the money we borrow is not being reinvested like it normally is. So we're
But we
losing
would lose the 300,000 plus the
the
interest
interest.
that we have to
Yeah.
pay out. Yep,
Right.
Yeah,
yep. So it's double.
double.
I'm just going to end up by saying hats off to the board. I know it's been a lot of extra time, extra meeting, extra effort to try to get this to pass, to help people understand what we're up against. I've supported it from the beginning, but again, hats off to all of you and thank you for your time. It's appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Go ahead, you can read it out.
We have one more question.
If budgets were to fail, would class sizes go up?
That would depend upon, that depends more upon vacancies. The teachers that are currently here have contracts, and we would be cutting things that we've added or things that are vacant. But we are still right now in the position in at least one of our schools, two of our schools, of having vacant positions that we can't fill. And we are going to continue to try and fill those positions so that class sizes stay within the education quality standard range, which is what we try to do. But long-term, that can be, that can be something that happens over time, which is something we don't want, because we're pretty careful with our resource allocation to make sure we're within a range.
Any other questions from the public?
We'll just say that if we don't have a budget before the next fiscal year, it just really ties our hands. It's like we can't do all the things that need to be done, so things will have to wait, like we talked about with extracurricular activities. Just without a budget, we can't fund those things. So it's just, it really puts us in a tough spot if we don't have a budget on July 1st.
I also would like to add that I know that I've seen some comments where people were obviously not wanting to see that, but we're not saying we're going to cut it. We're just saying we have to hold on it until there's a budget. And that's all we're saying. No one's looking to cut those things. We just have to hold it, which means that obviously anything that's going on this summer may not occur. That could happen, because if we don't have a passed budget, we may have to hold, and if we hold long enough, it could be that it will not happen.
I think
Because
it's,
we have things that we're already committed to that we have to pay, so the things that we aren't committed to, we can't commit to them until we have a budget.
and I think it's also important to just reiterate that at this point in the year, with, again, over 80% of districts having passed their budgets, if this third proposal gets voted down, we're really going to be in a position where we have to cut, and we're going to cut, but you're still going to see a very minimal impact on what your tax rate is, because such a large portion is out of our hands. It's coming from the CLA. So I also just want to reiterate that, is that not only will we be having to put things on hold, there's only so much that we can do that's going to have a noticeable impact for our taxpayers, which include us. We are also, residents and taxpayers in our communities as well.
Well, I will add, apologies to anyone listening. I missed the first part of the informational. My civilian job is very busy right now. Wait, we got a question. Can you?
Brooks is saying thank you and keep up the great work.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the comment. I would like to add, so we're getting close to July, and we normally start having budget discussions about next year's budget in October. So we're 5 months away from normally discussing what next year's budget is. There's always things that we can tweak and we can adjust, and we welcome any feedback on how we can do that. Hopefully the community understands that we need an operating budget at this point in the year, and that we're going to keep working to be fiscally responsive in years to come. But we have a lot of really good staff, teachers, admin, paras, custodians who are really dedicated to making this district work, even if there would be other opportunities elsewhere. So I think it's important that we remember that and we just try to like push forward. And I think this district does a lot with less. So hopefully share that if we can get through this round, that next year we can have even more fuller discussions, maybe earlier. But I just think it's really important to emphasize that we need to be able to operate and plan for next year and, you know, give everyone the tools to do so. So just thanks for listening. And then there's a question, would professional development be cut if budget keeps failing? I would say, I guess that would be something we'd have to talk about. I don't know.
If it is, you're contracted as a teacher, contracted professional development, that's part of your contract, we have to honor that. Anything above or beyond, or anything we would be bringing into the district, we would have to wait. Nothing discretionary.
All right, seeing no other questions, once again, we thank you very much for joining us and listening to us and asking questions that hopefully you got all the answers to that you wanted. We will going to adjourn the meeting at 7:40 p.m.